Here we are in this week's assignments module, which are due Sunday, September 5th. This week, you'll be reading Chapter 1, The 19th Century, An Expanding Field. And this chapter is all about the impact that the Industrial Revolution had in Europe and America. And especially during the 19th century, science and technology were applied to the graphic arts. And this affected all areas such as printing, papermaking, and typesetting. And the rise of the popular press helped to create a new industry, advertising, and with it, demands for new typefaces, design concepts, and high-speed printing. By the end of the 19th century, it gave rise to an emerging profession, that of the graphic designer, as someone who sought and brought structural order and visual form to printed communications. And here we see some examples of Victorian graphic design of the 19th century, and we can see how the designers are integrating type and image for more effective communication. Have a look at this week's lectures. There's an article on textile designs by William Morris. Morris was a designer. He designed typefaces, an architect, even a socialist. And this article is about Morris's fabric designs, many of which are still produced and used in home interiors today. Have a look at Lydia Pinkham advertisements. Lydia Pinkham was a middle-aged housewife who started out making home remedies in her kitchen, and she became quite a celebrity. Pinkham's advertisements are more than simply persuading women to buy the product. They carry embedded messages about the world that they lived in and their place in it. Also, have a look at the principles of graphic design. And this is all about the idea of organizing visual content for modern graphic design. This week, you'll be completing your first Bibliography and Design in Context assignment. And here, you'll select a work of graphic design from the time period covered in this week's reading, but is not illustrated in the textbook. Now, this week's chapter is called The 19th Century. And if you Google 19th century graphic design, you're going to come up with results that have nothing to do with this week's reading. This week's reading is about Victorian graphic design. So if you're going to Google something, Google Victorian graphic design. So be sure that you're researching the correct topic. And you're going to create a bibliography on your example of graphic design. And you'll need to include at least one book, one journal article, and one web link. And your bibliography must be in the Chicago citation style. There's a link here to show you that format. Also, be sure to have a look at the Research Tools page here in Canvas if you haven't already done so that you understand how to use the MiraCosta Library's various catalogs and databases to do your research. So create a bibliography or research your item, and then you're going to follow this creative brief as a sort of outline to understand what you need to include in your write-up. First, you'll identify the work of graphic design. This week, you may not have a designer's name. You may just have a printing company name, but you'll identify it as best you can this week. You'll also provide a brief biographical background of the designer or the printing company. Again, this week, you may not be able to find a specific designer's name for your example. You'll also describe the message of the piece and how it is conveyed. Is it a literal message, or is it symbolic or metaphorical? The most important part of this brief is to describe the stylistic characteristics of your example that are similar to other design examples from the historical period. And you can do that by analyzing how line, color, balance, subject matter, and typography are similar in your example to other examples from this time period. So it's important to understand the general style of the historical period that you're working on. You also may want to include some influences on this particular design example. And then you're going to find at least 2 historical connections which examine the work within the context of its time. And these can be anything like perhaps there's a piece of music that was popular at the time. You don't have to go into detail about it. Perhaps there was a book that was popular during this time, or perhaps some political events that happened during this time. You don't need to go into a lot of detail about that, but just to provide some historical context. And then you'll post your brief to the discussion board in any format you choose, and this assignment doesn't need to be more than 1 page long. Then you're going to respond to other students' posts in the discussion board by including, say, an additional historical event related to the design example or an additional image by the same designer. And this assignment is worth 25 points. And when you're ready to submit your assignment, just click this link, and that will take you into the discussion board where you can post your assignment. This week, you'll begin working on the concept phase of your museum exhibition project, which you'll be working on all semester long. This phase is not due until September 19th, so you have a few weeks to think about it and work on it. You're going to be working on creating a museum exhibition on a specific topic of graphic design. And you'll need to look through the textbook in advance to find a topic or a graphic designer that interests you. Or perhaps you'll come up with a related topic on graphic design. And this week, you're going to be working on your exhibition topic and overview. Every exhibition needs to have a big idea of what the exhibition is about. And this will determine the information you want to convey to the visitor. And this stage is especially important to the success of the exhibition because you need to have a clear vision of what the exhibition is about, as well as an enthusiasm for the subject. And your concept and exhibition overview should be concise, not more than 1 page long, and you'll want to include these considerations. I've given you links to some examples of museum exhibition overviews to give you an idea of what they are about. This link is to an exhibition at the Metropolitan Museum not long ago. You can see that it's only a few paragraphs long, but it clearly states what the exhibition is about and its goals. There's also there are several at various museums. There's one at the London Transport Museum about an exhibition there. This one is a little bit longer, but again, it's fairly concise and clearly defines what the exhibition is about. So that's what you'll be working on for the next few weeks, is the concept phase of your museum exhibition project. And I've also included a bibliography of various links to subjects, some of the subjects that are covered in this week's reading. So again, this week you'll begin working on the conceptual phase of your museum exhibition project, which is not due until September 19th. You'll complete your first bibliography and design and context assignment. You'll have a look at these lectures, and you'll read the first chapter in the textbook. So those are this week's assignments. If you have any questions, be sure to email me. Otherwise, enjoy learning about the early days of graphic design with Victorian Graphic Design.